Ukraine is no longer just defending its territory. It is now attacking the logic of Russia's war. For years, the Kremlin tried to keep the war far away from ordinary Russians. The front was in Ukraine. The destruction was in Ukrainian cities. The casualties came from distant regions, poor towns, ethnic minorities, and mobilized men whose deaths could be hidden, ignored, or explained away. But now the war is moving closer to Russia itself. Ukrainian drones are hitting oil refineries, fuel depots, military infrastructure, and supply routes. Crimea is under pressure. Russian logistics are being disrupted. Fuel shortages are appearing. And for the first time in a long time, the question is not only what Putin can do to Ukraine. The question is what this war is doing to Putin's own system. DW recently spoke with two Western experts, Kristina Harward from the Institute for the Study of War in Washington and British historian Mark Galeotti. Their assessments are important because they point to the same conclusion from different angles. Ukraine is not simply striking targets. Ukraine is trying to force Russia into a political and military crisis. Harward focuses on the battlefield. She says Ukraine's recent campaign of medium-range strikes, hitting targets roughly 20 to 200 kilometers behind the front line, is a new development in the war. And according to her, it is already having a destructive effect on Russian logistics and supply chains. That matters because wars are not won only by tanks, missiles, and soldiers. Wars are won by fuel, ammunition, repair networks, rail lines, bridges, roads, warehouses, and the ability to move supplies on time. If Russian units in Zaporizhia or Donetsk begin receiving less fuel, less ammunition, and fewer supplies, that does not immediately mean the Russian army collapses. But it does mean something very important. The Russian army becomes slower, less flexible, and more expensive to operate. This is where Crimea becomes critical. Crimea is not only a symbol for Putin. It is also a logistics problem. Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 and turned it into one of the crown jewels of Putin's imperial project. But geographically, Crimea is vulnerable. It needs fuel, electricity, food, water, and military supplies. The Kerch Bridge is a key artery connecting Russia to the peninsula. Harward argues that if Ukraine continues its strikes, the Kerch Bridge could become practically unusable or at least extremely dangerous to use. She describes a coordinated Ukrainian campaign aimed at infrastructure around the bridge, the systems that help keep the bridge functioning. That is not just a military detail. That is strategic pressure. Ukraine may not be preparing to retake Crimea by a direct military assault tomorrow. Mark Galeotti is skeptical of that. He says the idea of retaking Crimea by force is more likely psychological warfare than an immediate operational plan. But that does not make it meaningless. Pressure on Crimea hits Putin where he is politically vulnerable. For Putin, Crimea is not just territory. It is proof of success. It is a symbol he sold to Russians as the restoration of Russian greatness. Losing control over Crimea, or even looking unable to protect it, would be humiliating. And humiliation is dangerous for authoritarian leaders. This is why Ukraine's strategy is risky. Galeotti warns that pressure on Crimea could push Putin toward escalation. He has options. He could mobilize hundreds of thousands of additional men. He could send conscripts to war. In the most extreme scenario, he could even threaten or use tactical nuclear weapons, though Galeotti considers that very unlikely. But here's the key point. Most of Putin's escalation options also hurt Putin. A new mass mobilization would be deeply unpopular. Sending conscripts to the front would be politically dangerous. Nuclear escalation would carry enormous international risks. So Putin has options, but none of them are clean. None of them are cost-free. That is a very different picture from the one many people in the West still have. In Washington, Brussels, and many media discussions, Putin is often described as a master strategist, a cold, patient, calculating figure with a long-term plan. But Galeotti challenges that image directly. He argues that the West has misunderstood Putin. We still imagine him as some kind of James Bond villain with a great Machiavellian plan. But according to Galeotti, Putin is better understood as a man who made a catastrophic decision in February 2022, expected a quick victory, and has been improvising ever since. That is an important distinction. A strategist controls events. An improviser reacts to events. And Putin has been reacting for more than 4 years, reacting to Ukrainian resistance, reacting to Western sanctions, reacting to NATO expansion, reacting to military failures, reacting to the Wagner mutiny, reacting to drone attacks, reacting to economic pressure, and now reacting to a war that is coming closer to Russian territory. This does not mean Putin is weak in a simple way. Russia is still dangerous. Its army is still fighting. Its missile and drone attacks continue. Its security services are still repressive. Its economy has not collapsed. There is no sign that the Russian public is about to rise up tomorrow, but authoritarian systems can look stable until they suddenly do not. That is another point Galeotti makes. He reminds us of the Wagner mutiny in 2023, when a relatively small force moved toward Moscow. The security services did not join the mutiny, but they also did not immediately crush it. Many simply waited and watched. For Putin, that was a nightmare, because Putin saw the collapse of the Soviet Union. He saw East Germany fall. He understands one thing very well. Sometimes a system does not fall after a long battle. Sometimes it simply stops defending itself. That is the fear behind the Kremlin's strength. Putin has money, security services, propaganda, and repression. But all three pillars, money, personal legitimacy, and the loyalty of the security apparatus, are now under pressure. Fuel shortages may hurt ordinary Russians more than the military, but that still matters. When ordinary Russians begin to feel that the war is not only on television, not only in Ukraine, not only happening to someone else, the political atmosphere changes. And even more important, elites begin to ask questions. Galeotti says some people inside Russia are already talking about the war reaching a point of diminishing returns. In simple terms, Russia keeps investing more and more into the war, but gets less and less in return. That does not mean Putin is ready to negotiate, but it means Ukraine's strategy has a political logic. Ukraine is trying to make the war more expensive, more visible, and more dangerous for Russia. It is trying to show Moscow that continuing the war will not bring victory, only deeper vulnerability. This is why these Ukrainian strikes matter. They are not isolated attacks. They are part of a campaign to break the illusion of Russian control. For the United States, this is a lesson. Putin should not be treated as an unbeatable chess player. He is not operating from unlimited strength. He is managing a system that looks powerful, but has real cracks. Ukraine has found those cracks. The supply chains, the fuel system, Crimea, the bridge, the refineries. The distance between the Kremlin's propaganda and the reality ordinary Russians are beginning to experience. The danger, of course, is escalation. Putin may respond brutally. He may try to punish Ukraine harder. He may gamble again. But that is exactly the point. Putin is not calm because he is confident. He is dangerous because he is afraid. And Ukraine's new strategy is forcing that fear into the open,